What is up, you guys? I'm Charmx. Today I'm going to be reacting to 3 disturbing true summer camp horror stories by Mr. Nightmare. Now, hopefully this is going to be quite spooky. Mr. Nightmare's videos are normally quite spooky, so it probably will be. But with that being said, the original links in the description. Make sure you go subscribe to Mr. Nightmare. Without any further ado, let's begin. I'm also really tired, so please forgive me if I'm not that energetic. I need some sleep, apparently. These are also real, I should mention. Allegedly real.
In 2010, I went to a summer camp called Camp Ernst that my parents signed me up for. Thankfully, it was with my best friend Keith, so I wouldn't be going there not knowing anyone. The camp was for 2 weeks, and it was the typical setting you would expect to see in those old summer camp horror movies like Sleepaway Camp. There were 2 big cabins where the girls and boys slept respectively. There was also a big lodge-type building with an activity center, dining hall, and other amenities, and then various other smaller buildings scattered throughout the camp. Keith and I stayed up later than all the other kids because we wanted to play on our Nintendo DS's together.
Nintendo DS. I haven't heard that, like a Nintendo DS. I haven't even heard of them in so long. So long.
It was reaching the deep hours of the night, past 2 a.m. We were still playing DS together. That's when the door to the cabin opened.
There's no locks? There's no locks? Are you kidding me? Why would they not have a lock? They should have a lock.
Panicking, we both threw our DS's under the pillows and pretended to be asleep. Footsteps moved around the room, from Keith's bed over to my bed. Then the footsteps stopped at my bed, and for a short moment, I felt the ever-so-soft feeling of someone breathing down my neck. Then the footsteps moved away from my bed and back to the door, before the door shut.
Oh. Well, that's not that creepy then. It might have just been like a counselor or a leader or whatever.
I looked over to Keith and said, "That was scary. Especially since whoever that was breathing down my neck." We went back to playing on our DS's. That's when I got a text message on my phone, which read, "Why are you two still up?" Those of us who had cell phones were given a list of phone numbers of the camp counselors who we should call if something were to happen. But that number didn't belong to any of the counselors.
Oh no, that's
that I knew of,
creepy.
at least. I texted back saying, "Who is this?" They never responded though. I told Keith, who didn't have a cell phone, and he was just as freaked out as I was. Obviously it had to be a counselor, or so we thought. So we went back to playing on our DS's with the screen brightness all the way down. We both heard the back door to the cabin open. We looked at each other and once again threw our DS's under the pillows. There were no more footsteps though. Suddenly my phone vibrated. It was another text message from the same number. It said, "It's Counselor Tony. Come outside to the back of the cabin. I have something to say to you."
Oh no. Oh no. If Tony wants to speak, he can come inside the cabin.
I told Keith, and he said it sounded way too suspicious.
I know.
Then we both wondered if whoever this Tony person was the one who just opened the back door. I got off the bed and took a few steps to the center of the room, where I could get a view down the hall to the back door. There was no one in sight, so I walked down the hall a little bit. Keith didn't approve. When I got closer to the back screen door of the cabin, I realized there was a little section of wall that caved in, and in that little opening, there was someone hiding. I got a little closer.
Why? You saw the person hiding and then you got closer? Are you kidding me? I would go in the opposite direction and either book it out of the camp, which is, you know, it's nighttime, so that's not the best thing. But if there's a stranger in the room with you, I mean, you gotta go get something to protect yourself in case they come at you, right? You gotta be prepared, because you don't know what this person's intentions are or anything like that.
I realized it was not a camp counselor, but some really old, creepy looking man who was about the same height as me. I ran back to my bed screaming.
Same height as you. This is like a young kid though, right? So how old was this man? He must be really old if he's that small, because I mean, when you get really old, you start shrinking because your discs in your back shrink. So I mean, this guy must have been really old.
Help, waking everybody up. It was at that moment that I heard the back door slam shut.
Here's Johnny!
A camp counselor came rushing inside through the front door, and I told everybody what just happened. The counselors went around the whole campsite, searching the perimeter for anyone matching the description I gave. It was a big place surrounded by forest, though. It would be impossible to find someone. What still doesn't make sense to me is how that man got my phone number. My best guess would be he somehow found a list of phone numbers that the counselors had made. But how did he know who I was? I still dream about this experience every now and then.
Now, I don't know if this story was real, but if it was, I would never go to a summer camp ever again. That's crazy. And like, were the cabins locked? Because it sounds as if the old man had a key or whatever. How did this old guy have a key to the cabins in the first place? Like, there are many questions here that need to be answered.
I was just 13. It was my first and last year at a teenager summer camp, which was basically a traditional summer camp for teens aged 13 to 16. The place had some history, though. An old woman who worked on the grounds died from reasons not disclosed to the public. The old woman was one of the former cafeteria workers, Miss Graham. Well, I'll keep this short. It was one of those nights that my brain just hated me and was basically telling me, you're not getting any sleep tonight.
Oh no, you know where this is going. You know where this is going. I'm just gonna assume, but this person sees the dead cafeteria lady. Something like that. That's what I'm gonna assume.
I was rolling from side to side in an uncomfortable cot as everyone else was fast asleep. The full moon made for a bright night. Beams of light literally poured into the room from every window. I was so far from tired that I just felt defeated. I sat up and rubbed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I noticed the light from the window straight across from me was blocked by something.
Oh no.
I gasped when I saw what was blocking the light. It was a person's head. It looked like an older woman with a red cap on. What the hell is this lady doing? I thought to myself. It didn't really hit me hard until I realized.
I kinda called this. You better make sure the cabin doors are locked.
The woman was looking right at me. Like her eyes were locked onto mine. When I saw this, I flipped on my side and pretended to be asleep. Or maybe I just wanted to hide under the covers like a baby.
How? Didn't he just say that he was like, he got up and then he was going like this with his eyes or something? You can't pretend to be asleep after you just did that. I mean, it's pretty obvious that you're awake. Definitely after you're doing that.
Gave it a minute before I dared look back at the window. She was gone. I breathed a sigh of relief. The room seemed darker now, though. Something wasn't right. I looked.
She's inside the room now?
Up to the window right above my cot, and 3 feet away from me, at most, there was the same older woman in a red cap, looking straight down at me. Once again, I covered myself with the blankets and cowered in fear. I don't know how long I stayed like that before I actually fell asleep, because the next thing I remember is going to one of the adults running the camp and telling them about the woman with the red cap. He looked at the 2 women who were also in his office, and they looked back at him with disturbed faces. One of the women said, "That's so creepy, that sounds exactly like Miss Graham." As she said that, my heart skipped a beat.
I called it. To this
day, I don't know if what I saw at that window was a real person, if it was in my head, or if by some off chance, maybe it was Miss Graham out there.
It could have been one of those people working there, dressed up as an old lady just to freak out any kids or something like that, which would be disturbing why they would do that, because I know like the slightest little things can freak out kids, as I've had experiences like that where watching kind of like a horror movie called, I've mentioned this before, it's like called Arachnophobia, where it's just about spiders invading some town or whatever, and that traumatized me as a kid. So, I mean, doing the simplest little things can really ruin someone's mind when you're young.
I'll never forget the time I went to a sleepaway camp in Pennsylvania. I was a little kid at the time, and I was very shy. Meeting all the other kids at the orientation on the first day was a scary experience for me. I'd rather be home playing Super Nintendo or something.
Oh yeah.
Some of the other kids made friends pretty quickly. I thought I wasn't going to make any friends, but luckily some really outgoing kids started talking to me early on. I can't for the life of me remember his name though, so I'll call him Mike.
Good friend you are.
Mike was a short blonde kid who always wore a Yankees hat. I thought he was the coolest kid at the time, but looking back now, I realize he's probably one of those kids who turned into a punk troublemaker in high school. During the tour of the campgrounds the first day, Mike and I picked up on a lone bunk building that looked like it had been abandoned and unused for years. We asked one of the counselors what happened. He said he had no idea. It was his first week working there. All he knew was that it hadn't been used for years. On the last night of camp, we were in our bunks. Everyone was getting ready to go to sleep. Mike came up to me and whispered something in my ear. He wanted to sneak over to that abandoned bunk just for the fun of it and see what's inside.
Oh boy.
I wanted to seem cool to Mike since I, for whatever reason, looked up to him. So I agreed.
Oh boy.
Whenever
No, this is not gonna go over well.
everyone was asleep, we went outside and kept close to the bunk. We waited until the lights in the counselors' bunks were out, which wasn't long since it was already late. Then we ran down the pavement leading through the counselors' bunks towards the abandoned bunk building. My heart was racing the whole time. I wasn't built to be doing mischievous things like this, not at that age at least. Mike led the way until we were by the door of the abandoned bunk. The front door was boarded up, which is one of the reasons why it caught our attention initially anyway. So we had to go through one of the windows, which, wouldn't you know it, there was one that was completely busted open already. We climbed into the abandoned bunk.
Now this one's a lot different compared to the other stories. Like, it doesn't sound as if there's gonna be like a stranger there or something, but at the same time it kind of has to be, because it's a horror story, so something has to be freaky. Now the question is, what's gonna freak them? There's either going to be someone inside there already, which would be terrifying. Especially if it's someone that they haven't seen before. Or someone's going to be trying to catch them or something like that. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to find out how this turns into a scary story. Because right now it's just a couple of kids being nosy, really.
Now these buildings were pretty big. They weren't little shacks like you might be picturing. Each bunk had room for at least 10 campers. This one was no exception. Mike and I stood in the dark bunk. It was kind of cold in there. We had our arms out in front of us to make sure we didn't walk into anything.
You bring flashlights?
I walked into a bunk bed numerous times, and I heard Mike doing the same.
Oh, could you imagine if because it sounds as if they don't have flashlights, right? Could you imagine if one of them stumbled onto another person in there? Oh, that'd be so freaky.
I stopped to listen to what Mike was doing, and I heard bouncing on one of the beds. Shh, stop messing around, I told him. I assumed he was hopping up and down on one of the old bunk beds, but Mike's voice came from the complete opposite side of the room, as I remember he said, "That's not me, I thought that was you."
Oh boy.
We had nothing to use as a light source, so we were in a pitch black room in a building that hadn't been used for years, and all we heard was the sound of someone bouncing up and down on a squeaky mattress. Needless to say, we freaked out and ran for the window we entered from. It was tiny though, so it took a while to get out. While I was waiting for Mike to get out, the bouncing sound stopped, and there was a loud thump sound. Whoever was bouncing on that bed must have jumped off. I jumped up to the window, and as I crawled through,
so someone's gonna grab his leg or something like that. You could just tell.
I felt two hands grab onto my foot and try to pull me back in. but I was already out the window.
Oh, that's crazy.
We ran back to our bunk and locked the door. We contemplated running to the head counselor's bunk to tell them, but we figured we didn't want to get in trouble. Yes, looking back, that was a stupid decision, but we got through the night okay and went home the next day, living to tell the story another day.
That last one was freaky. That last one was freaky. However, it wasn't as freaky as I was thinking it was going to be. Because what I was thinking was that, you know, first off, why would you go out in the dark if you don't have a light? Like, that's just stupid. That's just really dumb. But what I was thinking was that they're going to go in the cabin. And, you know, he said that he stumbled onto a bed or something like that, or into a bed. What I was thinking was that he was gonna stumble and randomly like run into another person, which he was gonna think was the person he went with, but really it wasn't. That would be even more creepy than what happened. But anyway, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you got freaked out. I did, of course I did. I get freaked out really easily with these kinds of stories. But yeah, anyway, if you like this, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Plus, be sure with a friend if you're new, and subscribe to join the family today. Also, make sure you go subscribe to Mr. Nightmare. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Boop.